I want to talk today about your lack of focus or the enemies of your focus. And for those of you that don't have time to watch, the TLDR is if you get rid of the good distractions, then you're on your way to having focus. But I'm going to elaborate it a little bit. I'm going to start with a bit of a conceptual story on why I find it so important to get rid of distractions. And that's why we made the thumbnail the way it is I started Artwod as a company, right? So we always have a start, right? We have like a start of whatever you want to reach. And for Artwod being a company, there's not necessarily a finish for this, but eventually what we want to do is we want to grow the company, right? So growth is sort of the end goal. Now, for you as an artist, that can actually be the same thing. So you start as an artist, but I'm going to elaborate this on two dimensions for you. So you start as an artist. So you have a long-term trajectory or long-term journey. And that is you start and eventually you have a great art journey. So your art journey, like that has a certain goal, right? So the art journey. Don't mind my handwriting. But on a micro scale, so on a short term basis, it's actually just to finish an artwork, right? Finish a painting, right? Beautiful painting. Wow. Awesome. That's essentially you have these two goals on a macro level and on a micro level. Now, as a company, what we do is like our goal is to grow. Now, what does that mean for a business, right? If you look at it from a business point of view, it's easy. You just want more people to use your product or buy your product or use your service or whatever it is. The ways that you do that is through various channels and various ways, which we do. And also, here through Artwod, it has this indirect way of growing the business. So you have all of these channels sort of that grows the business. But here's the thing that can distract you from actually seeing what is important. For a lot of people, when they think about how to grow a business, they think about, well, to grow a business, you need money. You need lots and lots of money. One, that's false. That's not how you grow a business. That's just the collateral of having a growing business. I mean, and you can see this with companies that get invested into that get huge amounts of investment money and then they go nowhere is because money doesn't save a business, right? It's just the collateral of having a good growing business. Now, what you want is more people, buying a service, buying your product. That's what you ultimately want. Now, in this thumbnail, what you saw is since starting this YouTube channel, or at least since like investing into it, we started growing. Now, we're not growing the business. What we're doing is we're growing one of the marketing channels. So let's say you have a couple of marketing channels. You have, for those of you interested, you have like cold audience, you have warm audience, and you have all these various ways in which you reach them. You can do that through partnerships, paid ads, whatever, right? Now, social media is one of them. I'm sure you know that. And so social media can be one of your marketing channels. Now, if social media is, and you start growing your social media, right? To some degree, it can have an indirect effect on the growth of your business. Great. Now, what happens is that because you grow social media and social media is a business in and of itself, you get these bonus opportunities, right? And that is what you saw exactly in the thumbnail. Since we started growing the YouTube channel, because I wanted to provide a lot of value and sort of my knowledge when it came to drawing, because again, when I share my knowledge when it comes to drawing and you guys find value in that and you guys find it beneficial for your art growth, eventually that will indirectly lead you to Artwod if you want to try it. And because Artwod literally represents my philosophy. So you'll find the same philosophy at Artwod as what you're seeing here in the videos, but it doesn't have to lead you to Artwod. It's just like we're providing value and that creates awareness of Artwod anyway. Because social media is a business, YouTube or any social media basically has this advertising revenue model. So they naturally want to use certain channels to grow their business or to make awareness of their product. And because of that, we are now getting a lot of interest for collaborations, right? For collaboration opportunities with other brands, with other products. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to not bore you too long with the businessy stuff, but I'm leading this to a point. Because we're getting a lot of opportunity, if you were to say money is the way to grow a business and people are trying to throw money at us, it would be like, oh, 1 + 1 is equals 3. So that means I can now use money to grow the business, right? And to some extent, sometimes you might be right, right? Let's say you're strapped for cash or you need to hire new talent. It's like, wow, there are other businesses trying to give us money. We can use that money to grow the business. Now, this is short-term thinking. Why? Is because you're focused on a collateral. You're not focused on the ultimate goal. And that is my premise for this video, because if we were to take sponsorship deals and the ones we've been offered so far, and there's like a ton of them already because we're getting good engagement, people find value from this, and brands naturally just then want to reach out. That's just part of influencer marketing. That's the bottom line. You cannot blame these brands for that. That's just what they do, right? That's what they're built to do. However, it seriously detracts or can detract from your main focus. And that's the reason we don't do it, right? It's the reason that we will never collaborate with these certain brands that really push it very hard. And it just doesn't fit, what we stand for as a company, as a brand. And it's not to say that we'll never do a partnership or like a collaboration, but usually if I do them, they're long term. I never do any like short term things because I just hate it. But for a lot of creators, it incentivizes them, right? And you see that with a lot of creators. And the problem with that often, and you see this by the way with creators or with YouTube channels, is that it actually deters over time. It deters or like it diminishes or it devalues the YouTube channel. And the reason for that is because on the path to growth, which by the way isn't linear, it's still like this, there are suddenly very attractive, like new distractions, like literally pots of gold, right, on that path that can steer you away further from the actual goal. And this is what I would actually refer to as your enemy. At Artwod, we are obsessed with focus. At each quarter, we have like a new thing we focus on. We call it the house fire. And like, that's the thing we focus on. And that's the only thing we focus on. And we will have distractions, but we try to ignore those distractions. There are, of course, immediate things that, or like sudden other house fires pop up that need to be handled with. But overall, like we keep one certain focus, and it has helped us vastly improve the quality of the product, the business, and the team dynamic in general. So I'm a big, big, big proponent for focus. Okay, so now let's apply that to being an artist. As an artist, you actually go through the exact same thing, both on a macro level and on a micro level. What does that mean? What do I mean here? Well, let's take it on a micro level first, right? Your goal is to have a piece of art, right? A certain artwork. So you start a drawing, you start a sketch, and the goal is to finish that and turn that into something. That's great. That should be your focus. Now, along the way, you get distracted. And here's something I want to caveat when it comes to distractions. When we're talking about distractions, or the way that I'm using the word distraction now, you might think to yourself, obviously, Antonio, you need to avoid distractions. Yes. Now we're talking about bad distractions, but there's something like good distractions or things that seem like very good ideas. And that's why I brought up the example of the paid collaborations, because that's exactly something that sounds or seemingly feels like a good distraction or like a good addition towards your goal, but might actually be a detrimental distraction. And so when it comes to wanting to finish your artwork, at some point, so you'll be on your journey and you start gaining momentum, right? Which is good, right? You start going faster and faster towards that goal. And then at some point, there's like, you have this brilliant idea of like, oh, maybe I should look up this particular thing on Pinterest to make my painting better, right? So I'm gonna take some very exaggerated examples. You're like, oh, I should go to Pinterest. Now, what you do is you go to Pinterest and then you get lost in the Pinterest boards and you start deteriorating your flow, your progress that you had in the pursuit of that perfect piece of reference that you were looking for. So that's like an example of a distractor. It could also be that you have your phone next to you and you want to look at Pinterest and then suddenly you're also distracted by the bad distractors, which is like social media, and you start scrolling and you're distracted from that. Or you hit some sort of roadblock in the development towards that final piece of artwork. Let's say suddenly like the composition isn't feeling right, or like the colors aren't feeling right, and you're like, hey, great idea. I'll look up a tutorial on color in the middle of your path towards this, right? And then suddenly you're binge watching a tutorial and no longer working on the thing you were working on. And so you completely actually kill the momentum of the thing you were going towards, which is your finished drawing or painting. And these are things that feel like good ideas at the time that you have them, but they massively distract you from reaching your goal. And so if we put that on a macro level, it's like reaching your art journey, there are many of these distractions. And this is actually more of a condensed sort of explanation of what I talked about in the Dunning-Kruger video, is that you're on your way, like you're on your path to becoming a great artist, which all of you can be. And then along the way, there are like these things that feel like great ideas. Like I said, like, oh, today I'll do anatomy, and then tomorrow I'll do composition, and then the day after I will do design. And these things feel like great ideas, but actually they are distracting you, and they're pulling you away from actually reaching your goal because they take away your focus. And that's something I want to really address here, is that they take away your focus. And so when you're in your art journey, whether it's on a macro scale towards reaching a certain level of being an artist, or whether it's on a micro scale of like towards reaching a certain piece of artwork, is that only do things that are in line with your current focus. So let me reiterate, your focus will shift. Okay, just like in Artwod, we shift focus from quarter to quarter if we really fixed the thing we were focused on in the last quarter, but we shift focus obviously because you need to. But your focus will shift, but that doesn't mean that it should shift all the time. If it's on a micro scale like this in your art journey, it shouldn't shift from day to day. If your focus is, I want to be a better character artist, I need to focus on understanding the proportions of the figure, then you need to allocate a good amount of time towards reaching that goal. You need to allocate some time to actually focus on that completely. And even though things come on your way that will distract you but feel like good ideas at the time, you should get rid of them, ignore them, and only focus on the thing you should focus on. Because I can promise you that will make you so much more productive in reaching your goal than actually buying into those distractions. And again, we're using the word distraction here, and everyone understands that distraction isn't good, but there are distractions that feel like brilliant ideas, right? And I feel like from an artist's point of view, these are much easier to recognize than on a company level, or like I would even say on a professional athlete level, is because the things that will distract you that feel like brilliant ideas often really are brilliant ideas. They're like things like, oh my God, this could massively help the business or my professional career, but you should still choose or opt to ignore them for the sake of focus, because the focus will always in the long term help you better. They will make you more efficient. They will help you. One, if you're on an artistic path, it will just help you become more of a specialist in a certain thing instead of being mediocre at a lot of different things. Because being mediocre at a lot of different things, or like even being like less than mediocre at a lot of different things, because at the time it felt like a really good idea to study them, won't actually propel you forward. And it's like a compounding effect, because if you discipline yourself, if you learn yourself the act of focus, then you will just be more focused all the time, and it will permeate in anything you do in life, is that you will do things with more intent. It's not only about focus, it's also about intention. Like your intentions will be more guided and you will understand better what to focus on, because that's like a skill you learn as well. Like skills aren't only hard skills, like it's also like mindset skills. There are mindset skills about being disciplined or being resilient, and being focused is like one of them. You should understand that things will come onto your path towards your goal that feel like great ideas. But if you're in the state of focus, you should choose to ignore those or at least park them until your objective for the focus is done. And on a long-term scale, it makes sense, like you're going to shift focus. So it's not always going to be the same focus. It's going to change over time. When it's on a short-term scale, it's like the focus was to finish or at least get to a very decent level of a finished artwork. And I'm not going to allow too many distractions. You either have planned everything beforehand or you allow very few distractions, even though they feel like good ideas, along the way towards your finished artwork. By the way, the one of the biggest advantages between being a digital artist and a traditional artist is that the traditional artist actually has learned that process of focus, or they were more forced into the process of focus because they need to plan. And that's why I really appreciate about people that are professional artists that do things traditionally, is because they have a very rigid structure. And it's not only just to limit them or discipline them, which is part of it, but it's also like it just has this particular allocated time of focus. So what I mean by that, if a traditional artist goes to make a painting, they will start with a focus session of rough sketches. Then there will be a focus session of colored thumbnails. Then there might be a session of planning the composition or the masking, like the masking they will do to get to the finished artwork. Then there will be a complete focus process of doing the fine line work. And then there will be an entire focus session of just finishing the work. And because they have these periods of focus, they are much more productive in actually getting finished paintings or finished results. And so as a digital artist, you really run into the danger of getting distracted all the time. And not only by bad distractions, also by good distractions, or things that feel like good distractions, like looking up another piece of reference that you already should have had in the first place, right? And they should be limited, like I said before. Or thinking like, oh, I'm stuck here, I probably should watch a tutorial on this so I can gain more knowledge, which is a good way of thinking, but it shouldn't be in your process of getting towards your finished artwork. That process should just be with the skill sets you have, see where you can get, and then reevaluate. I struggled with this, this, and this. I should probably learn more about composition and then do a focus session on composition. And then don't get distracted in that focus session of like, oh, probably should do figures as well, or figure proportions or color. And then you start day one doing composition, day two doing color, day three doing figure. Because again, there's too many things going on and you won't have focus and you won't learn as much. And that is actually a lot of the time what is like a big blocker or like a roadblock in your path to growth. It's these seemingly good ideas that are actually distractions. All right. So you can definitely actually pretty easily get rid of those and just focus. And if you have trouble sort of determining that for yourself mentally, then just write it down. Just like block it out in your agenda, or write it down, especially when you're going to do a painting. Just write down, this is the focus. This is all I'm doing. And if it's on your long-term path to growth, like I say in another video, just block out times in your schedule, pessimistically or conservatively, not optimistically, that you're like, these are the things that I'm going to focus on. All right. As always, I hope that helped, and I'll see you in the next one.